Alpha, beta, sigma, and the one nobody's talking about. Let me ask you something before we get into this. What kind of man are you? Not the label you've given yourself, not the archetype you identified with after watching a YouTube video or reading something online. What kind of man are you actually operating as right now? In your relationships, in your finances, in how you handle conflict, in how you show up when nobody is watching? Because most men have a version of themselves they present to the world and a version they actually live. And the gap between those two versions is where everything falls apart. In the last video, we talked about the nice guy. We touched on the different archetypes, the alpha, the beta, the sigma, and something about that conversation clearly hit because the response was real. Men recognized themselves, men started asking questions, and the biggest question that kept coming up was about the fourth archetype, the one I introduced at the end, the one that doesn't exist in any mainstream conversation about masculinity yet, the alchemist. Today, we go deep on all of it because understanding which archetype you're actually operating as right now is the first step to becoming the man you're supposed to be. And I'm not talking about the man you perform on social media. I'm talking about the man you build in private. Now, before we get into the archetypes, I want to say something important. These are not rigid boxes. They are not scientific categories. They are frameworks, mental models that help men understand how they naturally operate and how they show up in the world. Every man has elements of multiple archetypes, but every man also has a dominant one, a default setting that his behavior keeps returning to when pressure comes. And that default setting is what we are really talking about today. Let's start at the bottom and work our way up. Not to shame anyone, but to give every man an honest mirror. The beta male. Most men are operating as betas right now and do not even know it. And I want to be careful here because beta has become an insult when it does not have to be. At his best, the beta male is collaborative. He is supportive. He is a team player. He executes without ego. He is loyal and consistent and reliable. In the right context, working alongside a strong leader, supporting a vision, building as part of a team, these are genuinely valuable qualities. The world needs men who can follow as much as it needs men who can lead. But here is where the beta becomes a problem, when his collaboration comes from fear instead of genuine character. When he avoids conflict not because he is wise, but because confrontation feels dangerous to him. When he agrees not because he actually believes what you're saying, but because disagreement feels like a threat. When he suppresses his own needs, his own desires, his own opinions for so long that the resentment builds underneath the surface until it comes out sideways. Passive. Aggression, manipulation, bitterness dressed up as victimhood. The beta male in relationships is the nice guy we talked about last video. He performs niceness like it is a strategy. He puts women on pedestals. He stays in the friend zone wondering what went wrong. He keeps score of everything he has done for people, and when that score is not paid back, he becomes resentful. And the real dark truth about the beta is that his niceness is not actually nice. It is transactional. It is a mask. And people feel the mask even when they cannot name it. Women feel it, friends feel it, employers feel it, and the moment they feel it, they stop trusting him. Because a man who is not honest about who he is a man you cannot actually rely on. The beta male's greatest enemy is not other men. It is his own fear, fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of being seen. And until he confronts that fear, until he starts saying what he actually means and standing for what he actually believes, he will keep getting the results that have been frustrating him his entire life. Now let's talk about the alpha. And I need to separate the real alpha from the caricature because most people have the wrong picture. The alpha male is not the loudest man in the room. He is not the most aggressive. He is not the man who needs everyone to know he is in charge. Those men are usually performing a LPHA energy because they do not actually have it. Real alpha energy does not perform. It just is. A real alpha is a man who has been forged, who has walked through real adversity and come out the other side with something that cannot be faked. Earned confidence. The certainty that comes not from never failing, but from failing and getting back up enough times that failure no longer terrifies you. That is what people mistake for arrogance when they encounter a real alpha. It is not arrogance. It is a man who has tested himself against hard things and knows what he is made of. The alpha leads naturally, not because he demands it, but because people trust his judgment. He makes decisions when others hesitate. He takes responsibility when others deflect. He walks into a room and the energy shifts, not because he announced himself, but because something in his presence communicates. This man has his life handled. Women respond to him, men respect him, and he carries that without needing to talk about it. His social intelligence is high. He understands people. He understands dynamics. He knows when to push and when to pull back. He knows how to organize people around a vision. He is not just dominant. He is effective, and effectiveness over time is what separates a real alpha from a man who is just loud. But here is the alpha's honest flaw, and every archetype has one. The alpha's identity can become too attached to his external position, his status, his role at the top of whatever hierarchy he operates in. And when that position is threatened, when he loses the business, the relationship loses the leadership role. It can shake him at a level that surprises even him, because so much of who he is has been built around being the man at the top. A true alpha works through this. He builds an internal foundation strong enough to survive the loss of external position. But it is a real vulnerability, and it is worth naming honestly. Now, the Sigma male. This is where it gets complicated, because the Sigma has become one of the most misunderstood and misused concepts in male culture today. The real Sigma is a man who has all the internal qualities of an alpha: confidence, self-sufficiency, strength of character, certainty about who he is, but who does not need or seek external validation of his position. He has opted out of the social hierarchy not because he cannot compete within it, but because he genuinely does not need it. He moves through the world on his own terms. He is selective about who he lets into his world. His power comes not from social dominance, but from absolute self-ownership. The Sigma can walk into a room full of alphas and not feel threatened, not because he is competing with them, but because he genuinely does not need their recognition. His internal compass is so strong that external opinion barely registers. He knows who he is at a level that most men never reach, because most men are constantly looking for confirmation of their worth from outside themselves. The Sigma has done the internal work so thoroughly that he does not need that anymore. On a one-on-one basis, the Sigma is formidable. In a room full of people who are performing for status, the Sigma stands out precisely because he is not performing. He is just there. And that stillness, that self-containment, is magnetic in a way that aggression and dominance never will be. But here is the honest truth about the Sigma that needs to be said. His greatest strength, his self-sufficiency, is also his greatest vulnerability. Taken too far, independence becomes isolation. The Sigma can become so committed to operating alone that he misses the compounding that happens when strong men build together. He can mistake solitude for superiority. He can use the lone wolf identity to avoid the vulnerability of deep, real connection. And a man who cannot connect deeply, who cannot build brotherhood, who cannot be known, that man's impact is limited no matter how internally powerful he is. And then there is this. A lot of men claiming to be Sigmas right now are not actually Sigmas. They are betas who found a better sounding label. They are not choosing solitude from a place of internal power. They are isolated because social environments feel threatening, and the Sigma archetype gives them a way to frame that isolation as a choice. That is not Sigma energy. That is beta energy wearing a sigma costume. And most men who are genuinely operating as sigmas will tell you the real sigma does not talk about being a sigma, he just moves. Here is what you need to understand about where this comes from. In history, an alchemist was someone who worked with raw, base material, lead, copper, whatever was unrefined and ordinary, and believed it could be transformed into something of extraordinary value. Gold. But the deeper tradition of alchemy was never really about metal. It was about the transformation of the self. The alchemist was committed to the ongoing process of becoming, of taking the raw, broken, unfinished material of his own existence and turning it into something of lasting worth. That is the king-level alchemist. He is not defined by where he falls in the social hierarchy. He is not defined by whether he dominates or operates alone. He is defined by one thing: his commitment to constant transformation. He takes his pain and turns it into wisdom, takes his failures and turns them into fuel, takes the broken relationships, the financial mistakes, the seasons of darkness, and extracts from all of it the raw material for something greater. He is never the finished product. He is always in process, always refining, always becoming. But what makes the alchemist genuinely different from the other archetypes is this: the alpha transforms his environment through dominance. The sigma transforms himself through solitude. The alchemist transforms everything he touches, himself, the people around him, the environments he enters, the men who come into his orbit. He multiplies. He does not just become better himself, he makes everything around him better. He turns broken men into kings. He turns ordinary circumstances into extraordinary outcomes. He takes whatever life gives him and refuses to accept that it cannot become something greater. And I will be honest about the alchemist's flaw too, because I told you every archetype has one. The alchemist's constant drive to transform can make it difficult for him to be still, to rest in what he has already built, to celebrate what is already gold before he moves on to the next refinement. He can become so addicted to the process of becoming that he struggles to simply be. That is his tension. The man who is always transforming has to learn that rest is not regression, that stillness is not stagnation, that being present in what he has already built is not the same as stopping. But even with that flaw, the alchemist is the king-level standard. Because here is what Romans 12:2 says: "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." That is the alchemist's entire operating system. He refuses to be shaped by his circumstances, his past, his failures, his environment. He does the internal work of renewal so consistently that his mind becomes the thing that shapes his circumstances instead of the other way around. That is the man this channel is building toward. That is what king-level mindset means in its deepest form. So here is where I want to leave you. You can identify where you are right now on this spectrum. Maybe you recognize the beta patterns in how you avoid conflict or seek approval. Maybe you see the alpha in how you lead, but you also see how much of your identity is wrapped up in being at the top. Maybe you identify with the sigma, but you are honest enough with yourself to ask whether your solitude is genuine power or whether it is just comfortable isolation. Wherever you are, that is your starting point, not your destination. The alchemist is not something you are born as. It is something you commit to becoming every day, through the discipline to keep growing when it would be easier to stay the same, through the courage to face your own flaws honestly instead of hiding behind a label, through the willingness to take whatever raw material your life has given you, including the painful parts, especially the painful parts, and turn it into something that matters. That is what a king does. He does not just survive what life brings, he transforms it into legacy. Walk with God while you work for the crown. When he crowns you king, tell the world of the truth you found. That's king-level mindset. Kings don't beg, kings don't bow, kings build.